Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter was introduced in 1976 by a Dutch economist named Peter Van Westendorp. It is a fairly simple method, far less sophisticated than some of the other pricing analyses that we're going to look at later, and in particular when we're looking at conjoint analysis, but also when you're doing pricing from sort of like the brand level perspective, it tends to be a little bit different. The Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter is a customer level pricing analysis where we're asking customers how much they feel they should pay for things. And it's also known as what we call a direct method of pricing because you're just asking them. You're asking them directly. And when we get to conjoint analysis and discrete choice analysis, you'll see we're still dealing with customer level data. We're still asking them questions, but we're not directly asking them how much they're willing to pay. We're going to figure out how much they're willing to pay based on their answers to some other types of questions. Now, the Van Westendorp actually involves asking 4 questions, and they're actually not that hard to remember, but the wording is supposed to be pretty specific. So the first question, at what price would you consider the product to be so expensive that you would not consider buying it, or what we can call for short, too expensive? At what price would you consider the product to be priced so low that you would feel the quality couldn't be very good? And I'll refer to this later as just the too cheap question. The third, at what price would you consider the product starting to get expensive so that it's not out of the question, but you would have to give some thought to buying it? And this is the question that we categorize as expensive. It's expensive, but not too expensive. And the last one, at what price would you consider the product to be a bargain, a great buy for the money? And so we refer to this question as cheap, but not cheap with the negative connotation. This is cheap as in it's a bargain. Right? So too expensive, too cheap, and that is with the negative connotation, expensive and cheap. So it's just those 4 questions. Now, from those 4 questions, you create a chart. And the chart consists of 4 lines, and each line represents a cumulative percentage or cumulative percentage distribution for each of those questions. In other words, what percentage of people have said that the product was cheap up to a certain price? What percentage said that the product was expensive up to a certain price, etc. It involves a little bit more than just plotting those lines, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming slides. But basically what you're going to end up with is a chart with 4 lines, 2 that go kind of like high left to low right, and 2 that go low left to high right, right? So they cross, they intersect. And it's where those lines intersect that from those intersections that we determine the answers to our questions about pricing. Now, there are actually multiple versions of the Van Westendorp. The one that we're going to focus on is typically referred to as the modern Van Westendorp. And this is the one that if anybody asked you to do a Van Westendorp analysis, this is what they would expect that you would do in today's environment. Now, we're going to go through a bunch of different names and definitions for the lines and the intersections. But I think for most folks, it's helpful just to kind of visualize it and interpret the Van Westendorp spatially. And so I've done a little picture here with a little baseball diamond. And if you look at these intersecting lines, whenever I see this, I see the baseball diamond. And it's this little shape here, which may or may not be very diamond-like, but it will always have a high point, a low point, a left point, and a right point. And I will refer to these by their placement on the baseball diamond, and that the low point here is home base. Over here, this would be second base. The point furthest to the right, the point of intersection furthest to the right, that would be first base. And then you've got third base. So I know, again, it's not a perfect diamond, but it is a shape, a polynomial with 4 intersections, right? So that's a way to think about it. And this is the outfield. Now, each intersection has a name. We have the point of marginal cheapness. Now, if you look at the chart and you see which lines are charted where, you could see this specifically. To be honest with you, I can't think of which lines are intersecting, really. I just think in terms of where on the chart this would be. But the point of marginal cheapness would be the intersection furthest to the left if you're looking at the page. That would be the lowest price point of the intersection. And in the modern version, this would be the intersection of the not too cheap and expensive lines. Okay, and you may be asking, hey, wait, where does not too cheap come from? We asked them a question about it being too cheap, and that is one of the distributions that we actually have to invert. We'll talk about that more in a minute. The point of marginal expensiveness would be the point the furthest to the right, and that would be the highest price point at which lines intersect. It's the intersection of the too expensive and not cheap lines, and it represents the upper bound of the acceptable price range. So these 2 points are really important because they're going to establish a range for us. And ultimately, the range is more important than any specific point that we're going to pick out. And we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. The indifference price point is the intersection of the not cheap and expensive lines. It would be the second base in the baseball chart. And we don't really use it for anything, to be honest with you. I've heard it interpreted as the point that represents what people expect to pay, so that they wouldn't really notice, because it's just, so of course, that's what you would pay. And then there's what sounds like it should be the objective of the analysis, the optimal price point, which is the intersection of the not too cheap and the too expensive lines. And arguably at this point, there's an equal trade-off in extreme sensitivities to the price at both ends of the spectrum. So this is sort of the balancing point. And from that name, you'd probably think, oh, well, that should be the recommended price point from the Van Westendorp analysis. But for a couple of reasons we'll talk about, that may or may not be the case. So again, here's the baseball diamond, and just to kind of highlight, what my thinking is here. Again, the point of marginal cheapness, I would say that's third base. If you just think of that as third base, then you see it here over here in the chart. It's I've circled it here. It's that lowest point of intersection. In this example, that's going to come out to be about $60. The point of marginal expensiveness would be the point furthest to the right. This is first base. And in this case, it would be $99. So in this example, the ultimate finding is like between $60 and $99. This is actually the example we're going to work through in just a minute. The indifference price point is second base, and it's going to be between the PMC and the PME. And then you've got the optimal price point, home base here, and that also is going to be between the PME and the PMC and the PME. But again, really, it's this range is really the main thing that we're trying to establish. And like I said, generally speaking, we're more interested in the acceptable range than with any individual price point. If you're forced to pick one price point, if someone says, I just want a simple answer, give me one answer. Again, historically, you would think it would be the OPP. Why would you call it the optimal price point if that wasn't like the best answer? But many analysts today doing the modern Van Westendorp analysis will actually, if they had to pick a single point, would pick the PME, the price of marginal expensiveness. And the rationale for that is it's the highest point within the acceptable price range. If it's acceptable, ask for the most that's acceptable. Now, the only reason I have to highlight that it's the modern version is that there is an original version. So the one that we do today, which involves inverting the cheap and too cheap cumulative percent distributions. That's not what Peter Van Westendorp initially presented in 1976. I don't know why it changed, who initiated the change, but it's something that at some point changed. And the final charts look a bit different. They're interpreted basically the same, though. You're still going to get the 4 points of intersection with a range and an optimal price point. As I just said, and this will probably make more sense as we go through the example, but the prevailing practice now with the modern version is to flip the cheap and not cheap lines. Whereas in the original version, Van Westendorp flipped the cheap and expensive lines. So you're not getting the same 4 points of intersection, but you are getting 4 points of intersection. They're not the same lines, but the points of intersection have the same names. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the original. I'm going to show it to you, and it's more for historical purposes, I guess, and for you to understand maybe why we interpret the PME a little bit differently in the modern version than you would think based on the names of the points. And that reason would be, if you look closely, the optimal price point from the original Van Westendorp and the price of marginal expense, or the point of marginal expensiveness in the modern version, are the same point. They're actually the intersection of the same lines, the not cheap and too expensive lines. And so if you do the modern version and you recommend the PME as, like, well, that's what you should charge, that actually is the same answer you would get if you recommended the optimal price point from the original. Again, I don't know for a fact that that's kind of how those things worked out, but it's something I've noticed over the years. And, if you read enough about this, by Googling it and reading some of the more recent articles, there definitely was a shift at some point, somewhere along the line, where what was originally presented, and it wasn't even, I don't think, a published paper at any point. The Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter was presented at a big conference, and it kind of took off from there. But what Van Westendorp initially presented and what we're going to focus on, again, the modern version, they're actually a little bit different. And so just to give you an idea, this is what an original Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter chart looks like. Again, we still have the PMC over here, the PME. The range will typically be larger than you would get for the same data with the modern version. And it looks less like a diamond. It doesn't look so much like a baseball diamond. But it's still, you can still think of it as, the high point, the low point, the left point, the right point. And, this is just a description similar to what I gave you for the modern one of which lines are intersecting. But don't get confused by this. Don't get hung up on this. I've had students in the past that really were trying to memorize, which lines intersect? Think of the picture. And it's the high point, the low point, the left point, the right point. If you know how to interpret them based on their location, that's all you need to know. Okay, we try to make this as easy as possible. There are some prominent criticisms and limitations of the Van Westendorp. Some are more important than others. I mean, one of them is just the assumption of rationality, that when you're asking people what would they be willing to pay, that they're basing that on common sense knowledge, right? And I don't really have a big issue with that with the Van Westendorp. Most of the types of analyses that we do assume that people are more or less rational actors, even though we know that they are not entirely rational actors. Second, it requires prior product knowledge and a frame of reference. If you're asking people how much they'd be willing to pay for something, but they have no idea what it is you're talking about, the answers that they give you will not be very meaningful. I think more important, more fundamentally at heart of the criticisms of this method, it does not account for competition. So you could ask people what they'd be willing to pay through those 4 questions, looking at the intersections, and say they come out with an answer that the optimal price point would be like $15. Well, if you have a competitor who produces basically the same product and they come in and sell it for $12, the fact that in the absence of competition, customers said they'd be willing to pay $15 doesn't really mean anything anymore, right? So that your competitors can easily shift the price point and invalidate the analysis. Another issue is lowballing. And this really comes out of the fact that customers are pretty savvy today. And they understand that when you're interviewing them because you're a customer of the firm and asking them how much they're willing to pay, if they tell you they're willing to pay $100, you're going to charge them $100. But if they tell you that they're only willing to pay $75, you might charge them a little bit less. And so that's one aspect of it. It's a little bit of kind of a gaming issue. When participants in research understand what's going on and they have a vested interest, you might not get truthful answers. Another issue that's often raised is that it's not used in conjunction with other techniques. And that goes beyond just each individual application of it, but also to the whole establishment of the method. The Van Westendorp was never validated against any actual empirical data. It was more like an idea that somebody had that everyone said, that sounds pretty good. And I guess it must work reasonably well that it's been hanging around for, 45 years, right? But it does not have the strong scientific validation that it appears that it's based on, right? So it appears more precise than it really is. If you're someone putting together the analysis, you might actually view that as a strength. It's like, well, it looks like I did something fancy when it really wasn't that fancy. And it is a rather blunt tool, simple instrument that really just kind of gives you a ballpark sense. It doesn't give you like a really, really, it's not like high-level predictive analytics, right? So you get away with it looking like you did that kind of work when maybe you didn't. But as a limitation of it, if someone runs with it thinking that, that price point that you gave them from this analysis is really precise and like that's the exact number they need to charge, well, the analysis doesn't really support that. So we would say in the interests of full transparency and honesty and analysis and being ethical, you can't present something as being more precise than it really is. So whenever you're doing a Van Westendorp and you're presenting that analysis, you need to be very upfront with whoever your audience is, that what the tool is actually for and what it can accomplish, and that it really is a blunt instrument and not something that's super precise, even though with the intersecting lines, it looks like something that is like, really highly quantitative. Now, the basic version of it, the one that I'm going to show you here, just to give you really, it's a simple pricing analysis that I can show you in one session where you get to use what we covered in pivot tables in the earlier modules. And that's the main reason why I still do the Van Westendorp. There's an article out on Google. If you Google Van Westendorp, the last time I checked, it was one of the first ones that popped up. I imagine it still is. And it was an article that said, the title was, Why You Should Almost Never Use the Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter. It's not considered like a high-level tool. It's something you do when you have like limited budget and you don't have the resources to do something better, or you don't have the expertise or the tools available. Somewhere along the lines, it was suggested that we could improve it. And so there's an improved version of it that's typically referred to as the Van Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter with extension. I've included a link to the article about it. I think it was from 2015 and appeared, I think, in Quirk's magazine, but just double check there in Canvas. It's there. It involves asking another question where you're asking the respondent how likely they are to buy the item. So it's not just how much would you be willing to pay, but like how likely are you to actually buy it. We're not going to cover that version in any depth here. This is the extent to which I will cover the with extension version. Now I have a summary of the steps posted here, but at this point I'm going to stop the video. And in the next video, I will pick up with like the step-by-step walkthrough of an example of the Van Westendorp. And when we do that, we'll talk a little bit about different data structures, respondent level, and stacked data files. And I think that's an important topic to cover in and of itself. So I'll meet you back here in the next video.